It's the end of 2019. This is the last vlog from 2019, and I wanted to take you through some of my favourite images of 2019. So note, I said favourite and not the best. If I was to show you the best, it'd probably be a lot less than what I'm going to show you. But in any case, they're my favourites. There's some stories to go along with each of the images. Some of the images you may not have seen anywhere at all. So let's get on with that. But just quickly, before I do show you those images, you're going to see a small film of some of the work I've done over the last couple of years, and hopefully at the end of 2020, and I do another one of these, all of the film will just be from 2020. So enjoy that film, and then afterwards you'll start to see some of the work that I've done across the world in 2019. For this first image from 2019, this is, for those of you who are not familiar with it, this is Glencoe in the northwest of Scotland. Now, on this particular day, it was actually the first day that a client and I had that was a really good day. And a little story that goes in with this is the previous day we had met a fellow photographer and another YouTuber whose name I will not say, and we said to him, tomorrow's going to be a much better day. And he came back with a comment to say, yeah, but that's boring. And I personally feel that as a professional photographer who's been doing this for nearly 10 years professionally, that when I heard that comment, I just kind of chuckled to myself. Because when I'm taking photographs, what I'm doing is I'm trying to take images that aren't necessarily there to please you, the viewer. What I'm trying to do is take images that I think have a very good opportunity to sell. because that is what I do with my work. I sell my work through many different agencies, and at the end of the day, that's how I make some of my money. But in any case, so that's a little bit of background to this image. Now, when it comes to this particular area, there is another waterfall that you will find which backs onto this mountain here, and I think you pronounce it Burkai Etiv Mor, so apologies if that's wrong. But it's become so popular that the grass in front of the waterfall has just worn away. But thankfully, this particular waterfall here, this small waterfall, is relatively unknown, I would say, to a lot of people visiting the area because of how you have to get to it. So when I was there with my clients, we scrambled down to how to get to this particular place, and we started working away trying to capture it as best we could in different angles. And just to the right of this image is actually the fall, a bigger fall from the waterfall, but it doesn't really work. And it doesn't really work because of how much you're having to include in the foreground with the mountain in the background. And I know people would say, well, what about foreground interest? And it just doesn't really work. And so we moved a little bit further up the stream, and then we found this rock. We just looked at it, and I said to my client, I said, if you want the image, that's the image. This is the image that will say everything when you show it to people. And when you look at this compositionally, there's a few factors in it that help it with the composition. So there's obviously the rock in the foreground here, but if you notice, there's the diamond-shaped rock that is in the foreground. The upper edge of it is at a diagonal, and then that diagonal carries on to the mountain on the right-hand side. So that's basically bisecting the image. And so what you do find in composition is that diagonals can be very, very strong compositionally. So that's the first thing that I was looking at. And then the next thing, of course, for me, is the flow of the water. Now, I know a lot of people love to do very long exposures when it comes to water, and I'm not necessarily a big fan of that. It really does depend on the situation. But I think with this particular image, because the water is flowing very gently, really, across the rocks, that it doesn't need that very long exposure to give it what it needs. And so I decided on a shutter speed of around 1/4 of a second, but it still gives you a really nice, calm feeling when you look at this particular image. As far as the time of day, it was shot around midday or so, but that's Scotland in winter. You can actually get really nice images around the middle of the day, really well lit images. And also, something you do have to bear in mind with this location is first thing in the morning, the sun does take a while to actually come up and light the ground up here, because it's having to come up around the mountains. But in any case, this is one of my favourite images. It's probably one of my most favourite images from 2019 from here up in Scotland in Glencoe. This next image from 2019 is from the city of Osaka in southwest Japan. And there's a viewpoints that you can get to in the city. Well, there's actually quite a few viewpoints, but this particular viewpoint is from I think it's pronounced the Sutentaku Tower. So it's an old, I think, TV tower that sits in central Osaka. And it gives you this amazing view across the city. Now, when you first go up the tower, you could actually be faced with long queues when you're going up there, because it's quite a popular tourist attraction. But there's 2 levels to the tower. The first level, where you get the first glimpse of the city, is actually enclosed, and the glass is at a very steep angle. I think it's at least 45-degree angle or more. And so trying to get your camera against the glass, trying to create images against that is pretty difficult. But if you go further on up to the next stage, you can actually be in the open air, which is great. But the big problem with this particular place is that it closes. I think it's around 6 o'clock in the evening, as far as the open part of the tower. And so you have to time your visit to this particular place extremely well to be able to get what it is that you're after. And when I first went up there, because I think I went up 3 or 4 times, I was told no tripod. And in the end, they started to get to know me, and they actually allowed me to use my tripod, because trying to get a panoramic image, which of course this is made up of several shots, isn't that easy when you're trying to work at night with very low lights and trying to capture traffic trails and whatever in a city. So I was extremely grateful to the people at the top of the tower, the security, that just basically turned a bit of a blind eye. And so I got this image, and I love it for many reasons. But I do love visiting Japan, but also it shows that futuristic look that some of these Japanese cities have. Certainly if you go to Tokyo as well, you end up with these big high rises around the city, and as soon as dusk falls, the lights come on. It's just fantastic to be up there looking across the rooftops of Osaka. It's an amazing view. So yeah, this is definitely one of the images that sticks in my mind from 2019. So let's move on to the next one. It's going to be from the same month. This next image is from the city of Tokyo, and it's one of the most famous places in Tokyo, called Shibuya. And this place itself, it's been nicknamed the Scramble, as you can see, because of the amount of people that are crossing the road from all different directions. Now, a lot of you might be looking at this and thinking, well, this is an easy photo. Why are you showing this? Why even bother trying to say this is one of your favorite images? Well, the reason is because of the what you have to actually do to get the photo itself. Now, the station of Shibuya, it crosses over this road, but when you're looking at this particular view, the big problem with this is that you're shooting through glass, and then inside the glass is a metal grill, which is very small. And so you have to try your best to try and hide the fact you're shooting through glass and shooting through a metal grill. So right now I'm looking back at the image and thinking, how on earth did I actually manage to get it? Because I did it again in April and I didn't manage to do what I did here. But this particular image was shot, I think it was f4, and that's one of the best things you can do when you're shooting through glass and there's a grill as well, is shoot at the widest aperture you can, just to try and get what it is that you're after. But it has great memories for me, because also during this time in Tokyo I met another photographer and we became good friends walking around Tokyo, and he was showing me different places. But is there, compositionally wise, is there anything extraordinary to this? No, but for me it's the technique that was involved to actually get the photograph in the first place. So something I have in my kit bag, which is very useful and I carry around a lot in cities, is called a lens skirt. And what that does is it's able to hide any interfering ambient light from the around your camera, around the lens, that may get into the image. And it helps you to create images like this, as it's removing more and more reflections as well. So I think I used a polarizer as well when I was doing this particular shot. The processing of this image, as far as I remember, because it's like nearly a year ago now that I processed it, it is a blend from what I remember. So there's 2 images here that were taken to be able to capture all of the light that was in the image, because of course there is so much ambient light coming from the adverts as well. So you actually do have to take multiple exposures just to try to capture everything. And then I just painted everything in Photoshop. So it has good memories. It was my first time in Tokyo, and it was one of the first places that I headed to. So I do miss being in Tokyo. I'd love to go back as soon as I can. March 2019 was an extremely busy month for myself. I was in 4 different places across the world. So I was in the United Kingdom twice. For one of those was for the YouTube meetup of the Landscape Photography on YouTube UK group. And then I went to Berlin for a few days. Then I was in Mongolia, which is where this was taken from. And then at the end of Mongolia, I was in the Highlands of Scotland again, which was actually on the Isle of Lewis and Harris. Now, evidently, when you're looking at this image, it's of an eagle hunter in Mongolia, and it's taken from the Eagle Festival that takes place in March. And it's a new Eagle Festival because there is a more well-known Eagle Festival that is in September or October every year, but this one doesn't have as many people. And with this particular image, I just love looking at this because the guy, the eagle hunter, the coat that he's got on that's made out of the fox's skin, the eagle is eating away there, the meat, and he was extremely generous with his time because although we didn't speak anything between us, he allowed me to just sit in front of him taking photo after photo. And when I was looking through my images, it just keeps striking me when I look at this photo. It says everything that you need to know. It just really could be from any time period. There's nothing here that really dates the photograph that you're looking at. There's nothing modern here. It's just a man, his eagle in the wilderness of the Altai in Mongolia. And if you do actually go to Mongolia and you go to the Eagle Festival, what you find is it's an interesting sporting event, I would say, in that you don't become a travel photographer or landscape photographer. In some ways, you're becoming a sports photographer because of the events that take place during the festival, the Eagle Festival. And as I said, I just love looking at this image. There's just so much for me to love about this image. So many great memories from Mongolia in March 2019. And Mongolia it's a country that I love to visit, and I'm hoping to be back there again in March 2020. I'm running a photography tour to Mongolia in March 2020, but if I get no clients, for example, then I would still go. And the reason I would still go is just because it's just an amazing place to go to. It really is. It's just fantastic. There's so much to see and do in Mongolia. There's so many different aspects to the country. And one of the really nice things about Mongolia is that there's just so much space. You just can go for a day or two and you just will not see anybody, and it's amazing because it means that it's not been trampled on by the photographic tourism that's being experienced in other quarters of the world. So this is the next favorite image, Mongolian eagle hunter in the Altai. This next image really does need no introduction. It is, of course, Mount Fuji near to Tokyo in Japan. And I went back to Tokyo in April 2019 because I wanted to capture the cherry blossoms. And for me, I did actually find that in Tokyo, it's not for me a really good place to capture cherry blossoms. I should have really gone to Kyoto. But in this particular case, what I did do is went around Mount Fuji. And of course, there is the famous temple that overlooks Mount Fuji with all the cherry blossoms. There were cherry blossoms and I did get a picture, but they were very early, and so it wasn't the spectacular scene that I really wanted. However, I did actually have a car during my time in the Mount Fuji area, and it allowed me to be a lot more mobile than most people that visit the area. And although this is a well photographed scene, what makes it different to me and provides a lot of good memories of my time being there is I remember waking up the day before this picture was taken, and the area was just covered in snow. And we're talking mid-April when I actually went, and it was just snow everywhere. It was a huge snowfall overnight. So this is taken the day after that, and you can see if you look closely on the left of the image that there is some snow on the hills there. And obviously Mount Fuji has snow, but it has snow most of the year anyway. And it's just a fantastic place to photograph. It's a panoramic image, as you can see. It's a classic rule of thirds when it comes to the composition. I make no bones about that. But, sometimes these things just work when you just use a classic rule of composition. And as I said, it's a panoramic image, and it's taken before the sunrise. It's taken just before. And the reason that I've chosen this particular image instead of the image that's taken after this is because as soon as the sun comes up, it's actually extremely difficult to control the contrast in the scene because of how much light reflects off the eastern side of Mount Fuji. It just becomes a whiteout on that snow. And I just love looking at this image. It's taken slightly long exposure. I don't believe I added any ND filters on, probably a polarizer, I would say, as the sky looks slightly polarized to me. I don't take notes. I know some people take notes when they're out in the field to say, for this particular image, I'm going to use X, Y, Z. I don't do that. I'm there to create images. I'm there to create images that I want to be able to sell through the agencies that represent my work and get a return from those images. So there's many factors for me that go into an image, but this is a definite favorite of mine, and it's actually not for sale anywhere at the moment. I haven't done anything with it. I don't know why, but I must do something about that. But in any case, Mount Fuji, it's a beautiful area to visit, and this is, if memory serves, Lake Kawaguchiko in front of Mount Fuji. This next image that I want to show you from 2019 is actually a very local image for me. It's only around 10 minutes or so drive from my house, and this is the village and the castle, the Chateau de Luynes, and it's one of the famous castles here in the Loire Valley. The actual Loire River is about 2-3 kilometers from where this place is, even less than that, I would say, to the left of the image. And this goes to show what happens when you live in an area such as this, and you can keep your eye on the weather systems to see what's going on and then react to it. You can react to the situation which is likely to be going on. So with this particular image, I shot it on my Mavic 2 Pro drone, and it's made up of 2 different RAW files to be able to capture all of the light within the scene. And then it's done with a very simple blend in Photoshop, because as you can see, the horizon is very flat. Now, something that I want to just give you a little bit of background information here is that the area is commonly known as the Loire Valley, but where I live and where this is, although it is part of what people generally think of as the Loire Valley, this is actually called the Val de Loire, so the Vale of the Loire. And it's a classic vale in that you can't really see it here, but where the castle sits here, that's sort of the top of the one side of the vale, the northern side. It then really does dip down very flat and goes across to the other side of this place, which is called Villandry, and which had another famous castle and gardens, and then goes up again onto another hill. So it's a very classic situation of a vale in it. But it's been mistranslated really for us English speaking folk. The actual Loire Valley, if you're interested, is around the city of Angers and then further west towards Nantes. So that's the actual Vallée de la Loire. But in any case, this, as I said, was taken with my drone. I just love looking at this picture. It's an absolute favourite of mine. The sun was just dipping below the cloud before dipping below the horizon. So just that moment, the streak of light that's coming off the sun. I didn't try to capture lots and lots and lots of tones to really HDR the hell out of this image. I don't want that. I want the image to look as natural as I can and as believable as I can, because at the end of the day, we're bombarded with imagery every single day through the likes of Instagram, through the likes of Facebook, and even on television. And so I have to try to create imagery that is believable. It is a real image. This did happen. So believe me when I say it's not a faked image. The sky isn't stripped in from elsewhere. This is what happened on that day. And as I said, it's local. So for me, it's even nicer. I didn't have to spend a lot of money to try and get out to go and get this image. So I love looking at it. It says everything you need to know about the area I live in. It's a beautiful area to live in, and I really should actually photograph more of it instead of spending a lot of time out of the country. But that's the nature of my job. I travel, but This is the Chateau de Luynes. This next image is from the Austrian National Library in the city of Vienna. Now, I had gone to Austria in July 2019 to do some work for a client up in the mountains. And after I finished, I thought, well, I've never been to Vienna. I've been wanting to go to Vienna for a number of years now. Now is the time to go, to be able to get what it is that I want in Vienna. Now, the weather was a bit up and down actually when I went to Vienna, and the day before this image was taken, I had already paid a visit to the library, and it was raining, so it was one of those rainy day things to do. So just go in and get inside, try to get some images somewhere in a church, cathedral, or in this case, a library. Now, when I went in the first day, they looked at me and said, "Oh, you've got a tripod. You're going to have to leave your tripod here at the cash desk. You're not allowed to take a tripod," which was frustrating. There's not much that I could do about that. But it's one of those things that happens to photographers. Very often they see us walk in, we've got our rucksack, they can see we've got some camera equipment, and obviously the tripod is the dead giveaway. And sometimes you're stopped and sometimes not. In this case, I was stopped. So it was a little frustrating trying to capture the library on my first day. I was able to get something, but it wasn't great because I was working with a tiny tabletop tripod on the floor, and I couldn't really get what I wanted to. And then when I was walking out that first day, I came across another photographer, and she had the tripod, and I looked at her and said, "Hold on, how are you allowed to use your tripod in here? I was told I'm not allowed to use my tripod. They took it away from me at the entrance." And she looked at me and said, "Oh, well, that's because I actually work here." So I said to her, "Okay, well, who do I need to speak to then to be able to get the permission to photograph inside the library with a tripod?" So she went into one of the offices and somebody came out and spoke to me and said, what is it that I wanted to do? What do I need? And all these types of things. And I explained the situation. And they said, "That's okay. If you pay the relevant fee that we ask for and then come back tomorrow, we can certainly arrange that." And I was just thinking, great, I can now go and get something I really want to do, go and get it looking really nice with a tripod without any hassle at all. And I said to them, something that I really would like to do is go up on the top level of the library to be able to look down. And they looked at me and said, "No, sorry, this is just not possible." So I went back to them and said, "But you're asking me to pay. And I think that if I'm going to pay a fee, I think I should be allowed to go up to the top level." And in the end, they relented and they said to me, "It's okay, but what you're going to have to do is remember this is a working library. People are coming up here all the time to get books that are being requested from us. And obviously where you're walking around it's a very precious place." So I said, "That's fine. I will be as careful as I can." So the image itself, once I got up there, when you're looking down on a scene like this, it's almost like looking down on the nave of a cathedral, where you have all the lines that are taking you down towards the back of the image there. So if you look at how many leading lines there are actually in this image, if you start in the top left-hand corner, you will see the lines coming down from the top of the bookcase. If you look on the top right-hand corner, it's nearly exactly the same. I couldn't get it quite lined up because of the space I was working in. And then down in the bottom left and right-hand corners, it's exactly the same. And then the next thing you have, of course, is the line of the balcony that's on the bottom third of the image, which is leading you into the back of the image. So there's many lines here, and then where the fresco is, that's the top third of the image. So everything's broken up nicely. Now this particular image was taken with my Canon 5D Mark IV with the 24mm tilt shift lens to create a slightly panoramic view of the library. I just love looking back on this. It has great memories for me of time in Vienna. It's a beautiful city to visit. So if you've never visited, I urge you to take a visit to Vienna. You certainly won't be disappointed. The next image that I want to show you from 2019 is from a place called Zaanstrekans, which is northwest of Amsterdam. if you're in Amsterdam and you're thinking, what can I do with myself? I have a spare day. Actually, this place is a really cool place to go. It's near to a railway station, which is where my story begins. Now, I was working for a client in this area, and the previous day I had gotten a similar image, but the problem was there was a band of cloud on the horizon to the right of this image, which was blocking the sun, and there wasn't any real colour in the sky. It was actually an okay morning. The client looked at the image and loved it, and I said to him, but it needs to be done again. I think it can be done better. And he said, okay, well, if you can, but don't feel any obligation to get up early in the morning. And so I got up, as I do, because it's my job when I'm there working for a client. And I went to get my train from near to my hotel, and the train was late. And so I just kept looking at the clock and thinking, am I or am I not going to get sunrise? Am I going to completely miss the sunrise? And when I arrived at the station, I just ran as fast as I could from the station to the area, the Zarskar's area, to the windmills, and just was out of breath and just managed to quickly get this before the sun was too high in the sky. And it goes to show the determination at times that you need to have when you're out there working for a client, that you can't accept second best at times. If you can get something better, then you must aim for it. Now, I know I've seen images that are more atmospheric from this place, that have got a lot better light, but you have to remember that when you go somewhere working for a client, you're not necessarily given the time to be able to create the most amazing, spectacular images with beautiful light, because sometimes it's not there. And this is one of those cases. I live in France, the client is in the Netherlands, and we had already waited 2 weeks for the weather to be able to go up and do the shoot in mid-August 2019. And so when it came time to it, I just had to use the best of my abilities to get what it is that I got in the time that I had. And so this image of the windmills has very good memories from me. It was a joy to work with that client. He was an amazing client to work for. And it's an area actually I would certainly go back to and try and recreate some of these images for myself and try and get some better light myself. I just absolutely love this area. It is really nice. And although it becomes full of tourists around 9 o'clock in the morning, certainly if you go early in the morning, then you're not really faced with a lot of people at all. And so it is really nice to walk around. It's really serene, and there's only locals there. But that's a little bit of the backstory to this particular image. It's another favourite of mine from 2019. In September 2019, I was on a trip to the country of Vietnam in Southeast Asia. And I was there to work for a travel company based out of Hanoi called Xiao Travel or Jiao Travel. And you can see a little bit of what I did to create this image in one of my latest vlogs. Now, this place is very often cited as being Sapa, which is near the Chinese border in northern Vietnam. But it's not actually in Sapa, it's actually elsewhere. It's about 4 hours or so south of Sapa. And although Sapa is very nice, you get to interact with the Huang people, and there's beautiful landscapes around there. The problem that I had when I visited Sapa was that all of the rice had been harvested, and so all of those beautiful yellow terraces that you see here and in this particular location, they had gone, and so it kind of just looked a bit like mud everywhere. So it wasn't very appealing in a lot of aspects to me. And I got talking to my guide in Sapa, and he said to me, actually, what you're looking for isn't Sapa, it's actually here, around 4 hours south. And I've had a friend of mine text me to say he's been going around here with some tourists, and here's some of the pictures he's taken. And I said, that's the place I really want to get to. Where is it? So we exchanged details and coordinates, and he's basically said to me, you're going to have to get a private driver to take you down there. So I got hold of Jiao Travel, and I said to them, I need to get to this place. Can we organize it? within a couple of hours, they had managed to organise things to get me a private car, and it's not as expensive as you might have imagined at all. I think it probably cost me like 40 or 50 euros for the day to have a private driver. And he took me down here to the rice terraces, and it is absolute one of my highlights, probably the highlight, I would say, of being in Vietnam. It was stunning because it's a very, very rural location, and certainly on the way down there, when I was driving down from Sapa, I did not see a Western tourist at all. This place does have tourists, although they're actually further along the road from where this particular location is. But certainly on this particular evening, it was only myself, my driver, and a guy that I met who was from Slovakia, if I remember correctly. And it was him, actually, that told me exactly where it was I needed to get to this place, because he had recceed it earlier in the day. And we caught it just in time as the sun had just dipped below the mountain you see in the background, and then suddenly the sky was just going just these beautiful, beautiful colours. And, you know, it's just, it says Vietnam, it just says everything you want to about the rural countryside of northern Vietnam. Now, compositionally, it's again a panoramic image. I'm doing a lot of panoramic images lately. And as you can see, you've got the curve of the river in there. And as I was talking about earlier, you've got a lot of diagonals as well, with the terraces coming down on each side of the valley there. And it's just everything that I love about landscape photography is there. The very low lights, the color, the compositional elements. It's just everything you want to draw you into this image. And with these type of images, when I'm creating them, my overall aim is to create an image that people look at and go, wow, I want to go there. This is where I want to go. You've inspired me. And I've actually had somebody on a forum keep messaging me to say, so how do you get to Vietnam? What did you do? How much did it cost? Etc. And so that's really nice, because it says to me that although I was taking this for a travel company and of course for myself, is that it's almost job done when somebody comes back to you like that to say, this is just, you know, fantastic. Where is it? What did you do? And so, yeah, I mean, it's just everything I look for in a landscape. It's absolutely beautiful up there, and I'm trying my absolute best to get back to Vietnam as soon as I can. As some of you know, I had an extended stay in Vietnam in October, not by choice, but by the restrictions placed on me by the Vietnamese Aviation Authority, because I had a MacBook Pro which was subject to a recall. But anyway, that's a story that's been told in another vlog. But my extended stay was basically in the city of Hoi An. I had spent 2 nights in Da Nang because I had to wait to take my computer in and then get my visa sorted out. But then after that, I basically said to my travel agent who had invited me to Vietnam, I really want to go back to Hoi An. I find it a much more palatable place to be rather than being in Da Nang. There's many more characters for me in Hoi An that I can be photographing, and other things that I can be doing. And one of the things that happened in Hoi An is I made a lot of friends there. And one of the friends that I made was a lady that works in the local tourist office. And one day we got chatting about the work that I do and what it is that I like to photograph. And she said to me, well, what are you doing tomorrow? And I said, well, I'm stuck here, so I'm not really doing much at all. I just keep walking around the old town. So she said to me, well, would you like me to take you out to see if we can get some photographs? And I said, yeah, sure. So the next day I met her at the pre-arranged time, and then she took me off to one of the islands that's connected to the mainland. And we were going through this village and we shot a few people. And then suddenly we were going down this very small path that she was able to ride her scooter down it. And I said to her, please stop. I've just seen somebody that is absolutely looks fantastic. And I said to her, just please ask her if she would mind if I can take her photo. So what happened originally is that this lady you see here was in her garden, just tending her garden. So she did a photograph, which is okay, and it has her in her hat, and then you can see one of the tools that she's got. I then took a photograph of her in one of her workrooms, which didn't come out as sharply as I really wanted it to, and I'm not going to use it anywhere. Then what happened is she went into her front room, which I think also doubled as a bedroom, and she just sat on this bed. And then what happened is it had been a grey day, and then suddenly the lights just started spilling in through her window and was illuminating the side of her face and the blue wall that's in the background. And I just looked at her and said, that is like the photo. That is it. It is the photo that I want of this lady. Now, I had taken my flash to Vietnam, and it's not something I use a lot of at all when I'm doing travel photography, and I had forgotten it on this particular day. It was back in my hotel. So I put my camera on its tripod, and I said to my friend, can you ask the lady to stay as absolutely still as possible so I can get her picture? The lady was so kind, so gentle, and she just sat there absolutely still like a statue, and I got the photo you see here. Now this was taken at quite a high ISO, 1250, and I think it's around f5.6 the aperture. I can't remember. I'd have to look at the ISO, not the ISO, the metadata. And so it's just one of those pictures that I've come back from Vietnam with, and I think it's probably my most favourite portrait picture from the whole time in Vietnam. I just absolutely love looking at this picture because she's just sat there. There's just small, maybe a little bit of a small smile in there. And there are a few other pictures from this session, but it's this one that to me stands out. And afterwards, she just got up, said thank you, and then we had a little chat, and she gave me a cup of tea. And it was the nicest cup of tea that I had in Vietnam. Absolutely beautiful cup of tea. And it's just one of these experiences like this as a travel photographer that help create who you are as a professional travel photographer, because you're able to relate these stories back to you, the viewer, and the listener. The last image that you're seeing here from my favorite images of 2019 is from the city of Moscow, where I visited in November this year. This is a station called Mayakovskaya, and I had gone to Russia to learn some Russian and came away knowing more than I did know, but still needs much more practice, my Russian, as I'm starting to forget it. And I just love the Moscow metro. It is a stunning achievement that they did with these metro stations. If you know anything about the Moscow metro, you know what it is you're in for when you go down there. But once you go down there, nothing can prepare you for what it is that you're going to see on the Moscow metro. Now, I've just done a quick research on this to see how old this station is. It looks to be from the late 30s, and it's just amazing what it is that they created underneath the surface of the streets of Moscow. The most famous line is the Circle Line number 5, and that has some stations that are just mind-blowingly beautiful. But I love this one. It's just, I don't know what it is. Now, if you're looking at this and thinking, wow, I'd love to go and photograph the Moscow metro myself, just make you aware that sometimes it's not always that easy to get photographs of the Moscow metro, certainly without a lot of people. If you go around 7 o'clock in the morning to around 10 o'clock, there are vast numbers of people using the metro, and it is nigh on impossible to get pictures of the metro without people. There were some days I was staying up until at least 12:30 going into the next morning, trying to get pictures of the Moscow metro without anybody in it. And also the other problem you face here, of course, is the security services and the police, whereby I had various experiences, like I always do in these types of situations, whereby some people would come up to me and say no tripod, and some people would just look at me and walk away. And so that's the nature, as always. It doesn't matter if it's in Russia or if it's in the United Kingdom. You get that all the time, whereby you'll get a different reaction from different people. on this particular evening, I don't remember being bothered by anybody, but my strategy for photographing the metro was to find the information board in the center of the platform and then hide behind that, because it was wide enough to hide me and my tripod, which was at floor, not floor level, but it was basically, I just undid the legs of my tripod without undoing all of the different sections. So it was just a very low tripod, about a foot and a half off the ground. And then I used my magical tilt shift lens to create this. Now, something I can't remember if I did is put the extender on, looking at the image, because actually in the metadata, just quickly, the metadata won't show you if you've put the 1.4 extender on the tilt shift lens. But looking at this, I kind of believe I probably put the extender on to create an almost 35mm image of this metro station here. And it was probably an exposure of around 15 seconds or so. Now, the good thing is with those information boards I was talking about, they are dead center in the platform. And also what you notice when you're starting to photograph down in the metro in central Moscow is that all of the architecture is just absolutely perfectly aligned. So you can count the number of tiles from one edge of the platform to the other, and you can get your tripod and camera just dead center of the image. And you can see here, I did, with looking over my shoulder to make sure nobody was around, I did a pretty good job, I think, of actually getting everything to be perfectly symmetrical, which is what I wanted. And you've got those leading lines there that are taking you from the edges of the image right down into the center of the image. And then the tilt shift, because it's so low on the ground, it gives you a slightly different perspective than you would have if the tripod was fully extended. So sometimes I do like my tripod being very low and then shifting the lens right up. It does give a much more interesting perspective of things. So yeah, I just absolutely love looking at this picture from Moscow, and it's certainly, I would say, in one of my top 3 images from 2019. Just the colors that are there, the blues, and then there's not many people. There is somebody in red there where your eye is drawn to them, and the perspective created by the tilt shift lens. Everything is there for me for an architectural image that I look at, and it's just absolutely what I look for in a final image to go, that is one of my favorite images of 2019. And yeah, it's just, I wish I'd vlogged it. I think anybody that regularly watches my channel would have loved to see the Moscow metro in its glory. It's just stunning. I urge you to go to Moscow and experience this for yourself, because the Russians are an amazing people who are very, very friendly and very welcoming. And so as I stand here on the banks of the mighty River Loire here in central France with the Chateau de Montsoreau behind me, it's the end of my vlogs for 2019. So a huge, huge thank you to everybody that has subscribed to my channel over the last year, to all of those subscribers that have been with me since the beginning, anybody that's coming along to newly subscribe to me. Thank you so much for everything that you do. Thank you so much to the people that are always and continuously commenting on my work. Please do comment, it does help a lot, and it's really nice interacting with people. 2020 is already starting to fill up for me. I've already got many things that are going on between the beginning of January and the middle of March. So for example, the one thing I will tell you is in the beginning of January, I'm running a photography workshop in Glencoe in Scotland, so there's still time to sign up for that if you would like to. And then after that, I'm not going to tell you because there's some really very nice things coming up. Here's to 2020. Thanks so much and see you again soon.